Don Van Natta, who's been an investigative reporter for ESPN since 2012, back here on the show. How are you doing, Don?
Great, Rich. How are you today?
How did this news hit the NFL, best you can tell?
They're thrilled. It's really fascinating. You know the old saying, be careful what you wish for. This is be grateful for what you didn't wish for.
Really?
Yeah, the NFL executives are thrilled. The owners are thrilled. They see this as a way to drive engagement and increase fan interest in every single play, because there will be wagering in these legal sports books around the country, Rich, what they call in the UK in-running betting. So you can bet on whether a field goal is hit or missed. You can bet on an over and under on a punt. And so they see the possibilities of it. I mean, they're thrilled about what it's going to do for fan engagement, but at the same time, they also are tempering expectations of how much more money it's going to put in everybody's pockets. But they're absolutely thrilled that this went this way.
Well, I got to tell you, Don, I mean, that is completely anathema to the NFL that I have been around over the last, 14-plus years. Where did this, turnabout come from, do you think?
Well, as you know, Rich, Jerry Jones and Robert Kraft, two of the most influential and arguably most powerful owners in the league, were early investors in DraftKings. I think there was a sense among the owners that this was coming. And as you know, the NFL is very, very good at figuring out a way to monetize anything and everything. And, you know, this past March at an owners meeting that was held in Orlando, Eric Grubman, the longtime NFL executive vice president, gave a presentation to the owners during that meeting on gambling and what it would mean for the league. Grubman had spent about a year working on it. He studied the legal bookmakers in the UK and in Europe, and he got the owners ready for what by then everyone saw was likely coming from the Supreme Court, which we saw yesterday. But at the same time, Rich, he lowered the expectations on revenues. It's really the non-measurable money that they're going to see down the road when, of course, the broadcast deals come up in 2022. And if the ratings go up and they expect that they will once a lot of these online bookmakers around the country begin operating, then they see that as a bump that they'll see down the road. Mark Cuban yesterday, I believe, said that the NFL franchises instantly doubled in value, and there was some chortling among the people I talked to yesterday and this morning about that among the NFL executives. They don't think that's true, but certainly they like the long horizon view of what this means for valuations, for broadcast deals, for fan engagement, for television ratings.
On to Insider Report with Don Van Natta, senior writer, ESPN.com, ESPN the magazine, senior investigative reporter. So then how does that square with the public statements about the NFL concerned for the integrity of the game?
Well, it does square in the sense that what they talk about is because the gambling will no longer be offshore, that the NFL will now be partners with these bookmakers, and they'll be able to actually monitor betting patterns in a far more transparent way than it is now. And they certainly are still talking about that, Rich. As you know, that's been Roger Goodell's mantra forever. And they're still very, very concerned about that. But they feel it will be a lot easier to do that, particularly if the bookmakers use the official data of the NFL. And that is a revenue stream that they're expecting to get. So you're going to still hear a lot about the integrity of the game and how important that is. But, this is now the law of the land. And so the NFL is going to figure out a way to monetize it. And those discussions began long before yesterday. And there's just a lot of optimism about what this will do for fan engagement.
Well, in terms of, so how does it work? Because Brent Musburger, who's my next guest on this show, when we mentioned a few months ago Adam Silver's idea, posited in an op-ed, that there would be some form of integrity fee, although it wasn't the words that he used, but it sounds like one. A percentage would go to the league from all the bookmakers. Brent Musburger laughed at that and said that certainly wouldn't happen in his mind or speaking to anybody that he knows. And certainly since it hasn't happened in Las Vegas and sports betting has been legal there forever. So how does this work monetarily?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Rich, and I think Brent Musburger was on the money in laughing at it. The discussions that I've had yesterday and this morning The NFL is, I believe, going to make an announcement pretty soon here in the coming days or weeks that they're opposed to any integrity fee. They just don't think an integrity fee, 1% off the top of wagering is in anyone's interest. They say, practically speaking, it doesn't work from a political perspective because no legislature is going to want to be seen shoveling monies at Jerry Jones and Robert Kraft and billionaire owners. It just doesn't work politically for them. They also don't like the idea that the legislatures can at some point, pull the rug out from this in a year or two if they need to. And they don't like the idea of legislatures being in charge of determining a piece of their revenue pie. It's a business model that the NFL feels that they don't have any control over, and that's the last thing that they want. The other interesting thing about the 1% from the NFL's perspective, as I understand it, Rich, is they see it as another fee that would go on top of that 10% VIG. So the way they see it is if the takeout by the bookmakers, these legal bookmakers around the country, is too high, then the illegal offshore bookmakers will still offer more value to the gambler and won't get put out of business. What's so interesting about this now is the NFL wants the illegal bookmakers, which of course helped turbocharge fan interest for so many years, to be put out of business. And they want the state sanctioned legal bookmakers at racetracks and casinos to put those folks out of business for the transparency reasons I said. And the way to do that is to keep the VIG down. So, it's a brave new world when the NFL is suddenly concerned that the legal bettor will get a fair shake on the VIG.
What a line, Don. So is the NFL going to be the league that takes the lead here and all the other leagues falling behind with the same model? Or is baseball going to try and do what's best for it? NBA? I mean, how does all this come together? Best you can tell, Don.
I'm not sure. That's a really good question because, Adam Silver is pretty adamant that this is NBA content and they should be paid for it with this either 1% integrity fee or it's a royalty fee, whatever you want to call it, or a 0.25%, I think has been the discussion in West Virginia of what it is. And so I think there's a split here, and it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out in the state houses around the country if you have, two of the four major American sports leagues saying they want some kind of integrity fee, and at least the NFL is not interested in that.
Don Van Natta here in the Honda Insider Report from ESPN, senior investigative reporter. So you just hit on the state houses here because I'm imagining before the leagues can figure out how they get a piece, the states are already just going to start this thing with New Jersey just right around the corner. How quickly do you think fans who are listening, taking in this show, will be in their states close to or about to or going to be able to sports gamble? Don?
Well, I think in New Jersey it's going to be just a matter of a couple of weeks. I know that legislation was already introduced yesterday in New Jersey to put together the regulatory framework to get people wagering maybe as early June, so folks in New Jersey can go to Monmouth Park and bet on the NBA Finals. 5 states have already passed legislation anticipating this decision by the Supreme Court besides New Jersey. It's Pennsylvania, Connecticut, West Virginia, and Mississippi. I think in a matter of months we'll see those states online, so you'll be able to bet on the NFL this fall in those states, most likely. And then there's another 15 to 20 states that have introduced legislation, and among them are New York, California, Michigan, Illinois, big states, South Carolina. But that may be a year to 2 years before they're online, Rich. But, I mean, the best estimate that I kept hearing from the lobbyists is they're hopeful that by 2023, in about 5 years, there'll be about 32 states, 30 to 32 states offering regulated sports betting in this country. And, we're headed to what, in the UK, as you know, you go to London, there's a betting shop on every corner. And,
yep.
That's where we're headed. And that's the model, by the way, that the NFL studied, is exactly how it's handled in the UK. And in the UK, you can bet as a soccer match is going on. You can bet on all sorts of things live as it's happening. And if you're a gambler, that can be a lot of fun. Could also run up the debt pretty fast, too.
And what about daily fantasy, Don? They got to be ecstatic, right, in that world?
They're absolutely ecstatic, Rich. DraftKings and FanDuel, which have really struggled. I did a piece about them in 2016, and they were really thrown for a loop then. But it was always a long-term bet with some of the investors of those two companies that I spoke with that this day would come, sports wagering would be approved by the Supreme Court. I mean, there's 10 million users that DraftKings has, and they already have this platform set up, and these are engaged folks who love to wager on daily fantasy, and so they're obviously going to try to turn those people into sports gamblers on their platform. So it's the lifeline that those two companies needed for sure.
Last one for you, Don. The league meeting, the May league meeting next week in the NFL, and so do you think that what you said to kick off this Honda Insider Report, that it's ecstatic, that it's not be careful what you wish for, but enjoy what you thought you didn't want? Will that be a face-forward message from the NFL ownership, membership, or even the commissioner next week as they welcome David Tepper into their mix, the new owner of the Carolina Panthers?
I don't know if they'll be expressing the thrills that I'm hearing quietly on the phone at the league meeting next week in Atlanta, Rich. Roger Goodell, as you know, chooses his words very carefully. He's been a longtime opponent of this, but certainly behind a closed door, they're pleased and not that surprised. They saw it coming, even though, of course, they've been opposed to this in the courts for so long. And now that it's here, they're going to do what they always do, and that's monetize it as the best they can. And they're, as we both know, they're very, very good at monetizing things.
Again, our TV audience just saw Mr. Tepper up on the screen there. He's going to coast through, correct? He's going to be welcomed into the NFL?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And the fact that the team is staying in Carolina, everyone is pleased about that. The thing I'm surprised about is the price tag. The $2.2 billion price tag is a little lower than I think some of the expectations were. There was numbers as high as $3 billion being kicked around a few months ago. So but from some people's view, Rich, you got a bargain at $2.2 billion.
Well, it's because of two words, Don. The two words are in cash, correct?
That's right.
I mean, that's how you can get a little bit of a bargain when you say, how about 2.2? Instead of 2.8, how about 2.2 in cash? Sold.
That's right. You get the cash.
Hey, man. Absolutely. We've all bought and sold houses in cash. Those are the best words you can hear. Don, thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. Great chatting with you as always.
Thank you, Rich.
You bet. That's Don Van Natta.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.